but it's law number 2 that represents your actual income, because law number 2 is all about how many lives you impact with that value. So it's not enough just to have to, bring great value. That's foundational, of course, but it's not enough. You've got to be able to touch the lives of many people with that value.
This is the Sales Bible Podcast, episode 361, The Go-Giver, an interview with Bob Burg.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. Lately, the discourse these days in both politics and in businesses is one of convincing and talking people into something. It's fundamentally a mindset of getting, trying to get the deal, trying to win the deal, as opposed to understanding what's the value that you're really bringing to a customer or a client. Having a getting attitude and being successful couldn't be more farther from the truth, which is why I had Bob Burg join us here on Sales Babble. Bob is the author of the book, The Go-Giver, and he has a message that deeply resounded with me, and I think will do the same with you. Bob and I didn't waste any time, and we got right to it. Welcome, Bob. Are you ready to babble?
I sure am, Pat.
Bob, I've never heard of you up until about a year ago, and a lot of people had read your book, The Go-Giver, and they spoke highly of it. So over Christmas, I bought it and read it, and I fell in love with it.
Oh, thank you.
Really terrific book. It's really about habitual generosity, but it kind of flies in the face of what most people think, doesn't it?
Well, I think that people have an image in their mind of sales that is sort of a distorted image, but it's an image that we get from the world around us, right? Probably mostly from TV and movies and all those things. And they think selling is trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, which of course you and I know is not selling. That's called being a con artist. And so, selling itself by definition is simply discovering what the other person does want, does need, does desire, and helping them to get it. So that when we see that as being sales, now we come at it from a whole different angle. We come at it from a whole different premise. And it really makes it a joy to know that you're really adding value to people's lives.
What's interesting about this book is it's a parable about a sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
The guy's really trying to be a go-getter.
He's a go-getter, which in terms of being a person of action, we're good with that. But I think he's a go-taker. He's kind of, everything's about him, right? Everything's about who owes him what and why he deserves this. And he's mad when someone doesn't, do business with him. And what Joe doesn't realize, and, what I tell a lot of salespeople is nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. And they're not going to buy from you because you need the money. And they're not even going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason why anybody should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. So, a person who is a go-getter and takes action, great. If they're a go-giver, someone who is really laser focused on providing immense value to others, well, that combination is very powerful. It's when that person's a go-taker and they make it all about themselves that it's actually the most counterproductive way they can try and sell.
People are only going to exchange for value.
Exactly.
And I am surprised how often I see people not understand that. You and I were chatting on LinkedIn, so I know we're both on LinkedIn a lot. I get hit up 4 or 5 times a day from somebody. It's all about that has a taking point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of epidemic at this point. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that because it's not everyone, but it's certainly some people, and those are the people who kind of give sales a bad name. And how many times do you see people in discussions on LinkedIn say, "Oh, I almost don't want to accept a connection with someone because they're going to come back and hit me up with something right away." And that's true. And of course, all you do is just delete it. And, I wouldn't not be on LinkedIn because of those people when there's so many good people there that look to provide such immense value to everyone else. But I do totally get what they're saying. I mean, it's, it's something you see all the time. And I always wonder, do they ever actually get any business? And you
I
think
wonder
they
that too.
must, so at least some of them
Yeah.
sometimes, but it's hard to imagine that they have any kind of sustainably successful business doing it that way.
I guess sometimes I just think it's the idea that even a blind squirrel finds a nut every so often.
I think you're right. Yeah. But that's a difficult way to store nuts for the winter.
Yeah.
It really is.
So for people who have not read the book, like I said, it's kind of a parable of this guy who's kind of lost in the world. He's a go-getter, trying to figure out what's the right path to go, and decides to work his network to meet some kind of decision-maker guy. And then you decided in this story to share these 5 laws of stratospheric success. How did you come to that idea? Like, this is how I'm going to write the book.
Well, I wanted to have it as a parable. I had written a book years ago called Endless Referrals. The subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was really a guidebook. It was a traditional how-to book on how entrepreneurs and salespeople who, Pat, they knew they had a great product or service. They knew it brought value to people and so forth, but they really didn't feel comfortable with the process of going out in their communities and cultivating the relationships that lead to people wanting to do business with them and referring them to others. So it was really how to go about doing that in such a way that you could have confidence and feel congruent with your values and so forth. And the premise really was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And so it was all about how to cultivate those relationships. But I'd always read a lot of parables and always enjoyed reading parables from the time I'd gotten in sales almost 40 years ago. I enjoyed reading parables, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take that idea about know, like, and trust and put that into a story form, a short story that would be easy for people to take in, people who otherwise probably would never be exposed to the message. And so, entitling it, I just thought, well, what is the basic element of a person who's able to quickly and sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? Well, they're givers. They're always looking to give value to others. They make it about the other person. And so titling it The Go Giver was sort of a natural. But I'll tell you, the best thing that I did for that book was asking John David Mann, who is a magnificent writer and storyteller, asking him to be the lead writer and storyteller. So, because I do, it's one thing to write a how-to book. It's another thing to actually write a fictional story. And so I knew that John really had the chops to be able to do that much better than I ever could have. And fortunately, he said yes. So we collaborated on it. And that's kind of how that happened.
The dialogue's genuine.
Thank you. And that's the writing skill of John. That much more than what I would be able to do with something like that. I'm a how-to guy. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3.
But I can't help but think, though, there's some time in your career before this book was written, you'd made these mistakes, I'm assuming.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
or seen people make mistakes.
Oh no, I've made them.
Sales managed people who made those mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, all of the above, really.
Yeah. And I think that's something I can really identify with, because there's lots of times where I felt like I've been too transactional in my life and not relational enough, seeing everybody as a mark. I like that idea that you said, selling people stuff that they don't need. That's a con.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe you could walk us through these 5 stratospheric laws,
Sure.
quickly.
Yeah.
But in fact, maybe we should only do a couple of them so people will go and buy the book to
Yeah,
get the
we
other
can do
3.
them all. I'm fine with that. The laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. The law of value is really all about the experience itself that you provide anyone with whom you're doing business. And the interesting thing is this begins before the sales process starts, because it's really from the moment you first meet that person, whether it's an inbound call or an outbound call or a referral, or in some way, however you met this person, it's from that introduction to the excuse me, the relationship building process, the follow up, the follow through, the sales process, the referral process. At every single touch point, you want to have it so this person really feels good about themselves, good about the situation, good about you. And of course, when the sale takes place, you want them to receive so much value. Which, and here's the thing, and this is so key to understand for anyone in sales, there's a big difference between price and value.
Oh
Price
yeah.
is a dollar figure, it's a dollar amount, it's finite, it simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be ecstatic that they did? And while you, of course, make a very healthy profit. And a very easy to grasp example is if you were to hire an accountant to do your taxes and she charged you $1,000, that's her fee. Literally, that's her price, $1,000. But what value does she give to you that makes it so worthwhile to you? Well, she saves you $5,000 in taxes. She saves you countless hours of time, and she provides you and your family with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly, right? So she's given you a lot more, well over $5,000 in value or use value, in exchange for $1,000 fee or price. So you feel great about it, and she made a very, very healthy profit, because it was worth it for her to sell or lease her time, knowledge, expertise, energy, etc., for $1,000. So so it's interesting, in any market-based exchange, there should always be at least 2 profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them
Yeah.
come away better off afterwards than they were before. That's
That's a
basically law
super
number 1.
point. That's a great point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Law number 2 is this is the law of compensation, and this one says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 talks about giving more in value, right, than you receive in payment, though you, of course, made a profit, because we know price and value are 2 different things. Law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives we touch with the exceptional value we provide, the more money with which we'll be rewarded. So your accountant in the last example did a great job of giving you more in value, well over 5,000, right? In terms of what she took for payment, the $1,000 fee. So if you're her client, the chances are you feel great about her. You would do business with her again, and most likely you would refer her to many, many others. Well, her other clients feel the same way. So our accountant is very quickly amassing what we call an army of personal walking ambassadors. And as she continues to add that kind of exceptional value to the lives of more and more people, her income will continue to grow and grow. In the story, the CEO, Nicole Martin, explained to Joe, the protege in the story, that law number one, the law of value, that represents your potential income. But it's law number two that represents your actual income, because law number two is all about how many lives you impact with that value. So it's not enough just to have to, bring great value. That's foundational, of course, but it's not enough. You've got to be able to touch the lives of many people with that value.
Right. That's how you scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're such big proponents of developing a referral based business, because referrals allow you to much more easily see qualified prospects. Typically, price becomes less of an issue. It's easier to close the transaction, and referred prospects are typically already of the mindset that that's how you do business, since that's how they met you. So to them, it's a natural part of the process to refer you to others, assuming you go about it correctly.
And people are happy to do that.
Exactly.
People are always happy to do that if they're happy with with the product or service they have. So that the two are dependent. Okay, what's the third one?
Well, this is the law of influence. And the law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. As you mentioned earlier with some of these laws, it's pretty counterintuitive when you think about that, right? Your influence is determined by how you place others' interests first, right? Sounds like a kind of a Pollyanna type of statement. But then you think about it, the greatest leaders, top influencers, and highest producing salespeople, that's simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking out for the other person's interest. Now, let me qualify that, if I may, because I think the statement can very easily be misunderstood. And I think this is very important. When we say place the other person's interests first, we certainly don't mean you should ever be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It's simply understanding that, as you and I discussed earlier, the golden rule of business is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And, Pat, and I know you know this, there's a faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you in others than by genuinely moving from an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking to make your win all about the other person's win. That's influence.
Yep. What's the fourth one?
This is the law of authenticity. And the law of authenticity says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And in this part of the story, Deborah, the very high producing real estate salesperson,
I liked her.
Huh?
Yeah, I liked her.
Yeah, she was pretty cool, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she shared that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are indeed very, very important. They're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you, as we like to say, show up as yourself, day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. Why wouldn't they? They know exactly who they're getting. And this is when that know, like, love, and trust really kicks in, and people want to be in relationship with you. People want to do business with you. People want to tell others about you. So really showing up as yourself is important. And as such, it's important to really understand your strengths and your weaknesses. We all have both, but we need to be able to lead with our strengths and really be able to walk in our value, our authentic value.
In a world of like it seems like it's a world of commodities, which is why you have like racing to the bottom when it comes to price.
Right.
The true differentiator is, in many regards, is you.
Is you. Yeah, you are.
You're the only one that's you. They broke the mold, most likely. Right?
Exactly. And when it comes to, as you said, in a commodity-based world, you've got to be able to distinguish yourself from others. And you do this through being that additional value. And that's really the key. And your authentic self is going to be that point of distinction.
Yeah. So what's the last law?
Well, this is the law of receptivity, and this one kind of ties it all together. This law says that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving, and this means really nothing more than understanding that, yeah, you breathe out, but you've also got to breathe in, right? In order to thrive, never mind survive, right? It's not one or the other. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen, you breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are, well, and the world around us gives us these horrible messages, not mixed messages, but horribly negative messages about money, about prosperity, about success, about business. I mean, my goodness, you'd think that everybody who does well financially did it on the backs of others or by cheating someone. It would, of course,
Yeah.
there's yucky people in the world, but but really they're so few and far between in terms of, especially the more a market-based society one is, where no one's forced to do business with anyone else. The only way you can make a sustainably really good living is by again, giving great value, touching lots of people's lives, placing other people's interests first, because they're not buying for you, they're buying for them, being authentic, and then allowing yourself to receive. And that's why we say that, again, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. So, we like to say it's not as though you're a giver or a receiver. You're a giver and a receiver. But what is that the laws of life, the laws of economics, the laws of business, the laws of sowing and reaping say that, the giving has to come first. That's got to be your focus. This is why we say that money is simply an echo of value, right? Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning. So in other words, the value must be the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a very natural result of the value you've provided.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, which is probably one reason why I like the book. I already agreed with it before I started it.
Thank you.
So, but it's interesting, people put these masks up because they don't want to show their weaknesses, and I think that's why people are not so happy, or make it difficult to accept from other people, to receive from other people. It's
Sure.
it's like this message that Brene Brown's been promoting, this idea of making yourself vulnerable to others,
right?
And that we're just better off just being, and it goes back to your idea, your authentic self.
Exactly. And, and as Brene talks about, that doesn't mean being weak, and it doesn't mean being inappropriate. Nope. It just means that you're you. It means that you're you. You're human. And, I think when we can be vulnerable, I mean, I think that's actually a great way of really developing a relationship. Because people want to know that they're getting to know the real you. And again, that doesn't mean
they do.
You meet
Absolutely.
someone and all of a sudden start telling them, huh?
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh yeah. Yeah, people want to know that you're the real deal.
Yeah, and she makes the point in the book of saying, you do it when and as it's appropriate. You don't meet someone and say, "Hey, I'm a real blah blah blah." I'm a real weakling, or I did this wrong when I was 15, or I blah blah blah. You don't go telling but when it's appropriate, and as trust begins being developed between and vulnerability is one way of eliciting that trust.
Yeah. You wrote this book in 2007. Here we are in 2021. I get the sense you have a greater mission in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what are you doing these days to make that mission come to reality in a richer way? What are you doing to grow?
Well, we have a number of ways in which we really expand the message. We have a licensing program that with a team of certified Go-Giver speakers internationally who are bringing this message out into different areas. We're about to actually, my business partner Kathy Tajanel and I are about to introduce a Go-Giver Success Alliance membership site. And we plan to build this all over the world and so forth. And so really, I mean, I think it's just the different ways. I've at this point now stopped traveling to speak. Even after COVID, I'm not going to travel anywhere, get on a plane to speak anymore. But I'll continue to do speaking engagements, keynote presentations. I'll continue to do those online. But I think the way that when you're speaking with one audience, the message only goes so far. So that's why I like some of the other things we're doing, that helps us expand to a consistently even wider audience.
We've talked about a lot of stuff here today. If you were to give the listeners one piece of advice they could take action on this week, what would that be?
Well, it goes back to something that a mentor a long time ago, almost 40 years ago, told me when I think he saw me as sort of Joe in the Go-Giver, right? You were asking me before, have I ever made these mistakes? I said, absolutely. And I think he saw me as that young, up and coming, ambitious, aggressive salesperson who, was working hard, but not, as we said about Joe, doing a lot of getting. No, what was he saying? A lot of getting, but not a lot of income and so forth. And he was frustrated, and I was. And I remember this person. So he was very wise, and he said to me, Berg, he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that was really when it hit me that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as those are. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's about that person whose life we choose to touch. It's about that person whose life is at least a little bit better just by having us as part of it. And so I think when we're facing in that direction, what I like to call inwardly motivated but outwardly focused, I think that actually creates that what I call the benevolent context for success. So the one action advice is just think, how can I add value to the lives of others? And it's always got to be in a way that they see it as being of value.
Excellent. If people want to find your book,
yeah, best place is Burg, BURG.com.
And if they want to reach out to you?
Everything's pretty much there. If they scroll all the way down the page, I think it is on all the, I'm on the various social media platforms, and I tend to be very responsive. So,
cool.
Yeah. And if they subscribe to the list, they'll get a bunch of goodies and be notified of cool things coming up.
Excellent. Bob, it's been awesome. It's been an honor to have you babble here on Sales Babble. I'm not kidding you. This has been a ton of fun. Really enjoyed your book. Love the work that you're doing. Great stuff. Great stuff, sir.
Well, the honor is absolutely mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, it's one thing to listen, and it's another thing to learn. But true wisdom is actually taking that learning and putting it into action, which is why I always, probably 80% of the time, I ask people, if you could give us one piece of advice we could take action on, what would that be? I ask that because I want you folks to become better sellers. not just listen to Sales Babble and maybe laugh at me and make fun of how I stutter and talk and, and all the things that I do, but to actually elevate your profession, which is why I do that take action question. I love what Bob said, that money's the reward for hitting the target of serving others. That is spot on. Maybe you've already read this book, maybe not. I highly recommend that you take a moment to get a copy of the book and read it. I've got links that Bob mentioned in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. Please look in there and take action. If you could share this podcast episode with friends of yours who you think might find value in it, I would really appreciate it. Would love to continue to grow this podcast to being even bigger and better. If you could lend me a hand there, that would be terrific. And if you have any advice on how to make the podcast better, or if you've got any questions for me about sales and whatnot, don't hesitate to reach out. That's why I have that Babble Me button at the top right-hand corner of Sales Babble. Yeah, just click on that, and that'll come right to me. That's all I've got this week, folks. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.